the communities that you suggested and you named off there, they do have some great, local areas. I lived in Plymouth. The problem ends up being is that when you compare Whitmore Lake and our community to those communities, the thing that you're leaving out when you're talking about is that they have a current tax base, a business tax base that they collect revenues from. The problem that we have is that we don't have that. So we have a limited budget that we are working with in order to actually try and maintain services for the citizens in our community. These other communities have a much greater ability in order to spend money in turning these things into parks and as you suggest. So frankly, the way that revenue sharing is going to be cut in the state here, I have some real reservations about even talking about spending money on something like that when we're looking at having to ask our employees potentially in order to start paying more for their health care.
If I can just answer that quickly, what we're suggesting here, could you please correct me if I'm wrong? We're proposing that the DDA take this on as a project. This is not going to affect your general fund money. This will come out of the DDA budget. And the DDA budget isn't part of your general fund. So it's something that we're talking about taking on as a DDA project. And doing it in phases, please tell me if I'm out of line here, and doing it in phases, starting with this first contribution and a beginning refurbishing of that area to get that ball rolling with that piece. So it's not something that would be in any way impacting the finances of the township.
See, one of the things is that last meeting that we had a long discussion about this. And frankly, we haven't decided whether we're even going to keep that property at all or not. I mean, that has not been decided yet. So that's been the whole key thing about whether or not that, the funding that you're proposing, whether it's something that we're, even looking at as accepting as a way moving forward. So I think the first piece of the puzzle needs to be that we need to figure out what we're going to end up doing with that property. I mean, frankly.
Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up next.
First of all, I have a, you said indoor market, and the first thing that popped in my brain was a facility called North Market in Columbus, Ohio. North side of downtown.
I know the area you're talking about.
And it's a beautiful space. I was there for a business meeting, had a half a day, wandered over, did a little fresh shopping. There's a butcher shop there. All kinds of things. It reminded me of the Pike Street Fish Market in Seattle. That kind of Capital Market in Lansing. There's a facility in Lansing, same thing. With regard to the development or the enhancement, the sprucing up of the parking lot area, if you were to do something with that building at a later point in time, whether it's tomorrow, a year from now, or 10 years from now, I would imagine that a nice, refreshed parking lot is going to add to the property value at some level. So if the DDA says, we'd like to contribute $10,000, and I just use the number you gave, towards this enhancement, maybe there's a mechanism that says if we sell the building, that we reimburse the DDA. Maybe not the $10,000, maybe 75% of it as an offset, because we've gotten some use out of it, and that leaves your options open to do whatever the board sees fit with that space, but doesn't leave the downtown us, I'm speaking the royal us, sitting, waiting, nothing happening. Just an idea.
Earl, I believe you are blowing slow. 435 West 8 Mile Road at US 23 near Whitmore Lake, a former factory that was demolished for development. Owner Earl LaFave owes $120,782 for 2008 taxes. According to the county record, he owes $216,132 through 2009. If you want to do something for Northfield Township, come to Northfield Township and do something with your property.
Well, I'll answer that very quickly. It's taken me 2 years to reach a settlement with the previous property owners to clean the site up. I just got that, as I've explained to several people in the township. I just finally resolved it with the previous people who spent 50 years polluting it, and I almost have it all cleaned up now. And I've worked with the county in terms of the county treasurer, who has given me a substantial amount of relief in a period of time, understanding the amounts of money that I'm spending cleaning the site up. So that was my priority first, was to clean it up and work with the county, never ever at any point in time deny or abdicate my responsibility to pay it. But they also have said that they were willing to work with me on this. So that's the status of that right now. I know.
So, Mr. Duncan, just as a matter of point here, that is old information. It was dated March 3rd. When that article first came out, I talked to the county treasurer, and she told me that it is not under foreclosure, although it says that in the article. It's old information. Mr. Duncan, I'm sorry, Mr. Quinto, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Last year, the board researched in itself and really considered what to do with the property. At one point, the board did make a motion to sell the property with several board members absent. And then, with strong reconsideration, I believe the whole board came mostly together and saw a different vision of retaining that property at 75 Parker, because they really heard from all of the property owners along Main Street, a lot of the businesses throughout the community, that if that property is sold, that the opportunity for any additional parking would be lost within the downtown area within immediate means. Yes, if the Vancouver property gets developed, then yes, there would be additional parking in there, hopefully at some given point, if indeed that ever does happen. But we, as a board, I believe, reviewed that decision, thought long and hard, and said we need to make a commitment to our downtown area, and that is to retain that property, to retain that building, to look at venues of restoring it, and to make a commitment to the downtown area to say, yes, this is a focal point, an important point to the downtown community members, because without that property there, it would really lead havoc to a lot of parking constraints that are present, to the opportunity to actually, again, as Earl has stated, and as many people have used that property for in the past, present years as a community activity center, and when it was a fire department, but definitely the second floor was utilized in that fashion. So, again, it can definitely and easily be brought back to that point in the future with funding that may be made available. But again, I think the board did make a commitment to the community to retain that parcel for a period of time so that we can go ahead and look at improving it. And as Mr. LaFave said, I like that conceptual viewpoint to look at it. Why keep it in limbo when we have the funds through the DDA? Because again, I'm one of the taxing agencies that puts funds into it, because the funds for the DDA are on TIF, and the only way those funds are collected is through the commercial district areas, such as one of my properties, and the only way that those TIF improvement funds actually could get larger is if we do improve our properties. And the only way we're going to improve our properties, again, if we see more people coming into the community. A great opportunity came forward this summer for the DDA enhancement grant, or the facade improvement grant. So hopefully we'll have maybe 5 or 6 businesses take advantage of that, which again will help, bring in more people to the community and help the business areas give themselves a facelift. And in doing so, it would actually increase more funds to the TIF, because, again, it's a kind of double-edged sword. Yes, we're going to improve our property, but because we're improving it, we're going to pay a higher tax on it. And because we're doing that, then several of the funds are going to go to the DDA, because again, they're captured only on the commercial entities within the community. So I think, again, I felt last year we as a board, when we reversed this decision, made a commitment to retain the property. So that's the way I feel as one board member.
Dr. Barb, I had a question.
Yes.
And that was, This money, does it have strings? What kind of strings are attached, or are there conditions?
I think this is something that we need to sit down with the board and negotiate. There, at this point, there are no strings attached. We see it as public parking that's available, that's not in the best shape, and something that we can offer for the businesses in the downtown area. There is public parking. It's a very nice parking lot. There's a walkway from the public parking to your business. We would want to sit down with the board and discuss if Mr. Mailman's approach is good. I, like Mr. Iaquino, understood that it was agreed that it was going to stay in township hands, and one of the reasons was the parking. We've signed a commitment for a market master for market on Thursdays all through the summer months into September, and we would like to use that location. We would like it to look nice, people coming to visit our market, yes.
Mr. Stanley, before you go, I haven't made a comment yet on this subject. Before we get into second or third rounds of comments, I would like to, I really like the perspective, and this is what's a great thing about having joint meetings and bringing fresh and different perspectives. I really enjoyed what you had to say, Mr. Mayor, about the fact that this money is not ever really lost. It's the DDA puts something into it. I mean, yes, you lose something through depreciation, but that doesn't affect whether this board decided to keep or not keep that building, because it would only enhance that. It would enhance the sale, it would enhance any future tenant. We've talked about perhaps leasing it, we've talked about selling it. Anything that we do to it that's an improvement is only going to make it better, plus it's our property to maintain anyway. So thank you very much for pointing that out to us, and I really like that perspective. Mr. Stanley, please have a comment.
Well, the commitment that Sam had mentioned last year about maintaining that property in our community was with stipulations that that was going to end up being leased to Northfield Human Services, and that they were going to undertake the rehabilitation of that building with grants and everything like that. That's when that sale was rescinded, and that was the intention. But in December, that whole thing came apart. So now we're left with a building that was originally committed to be restored with grants and funds by a nonprofit organization, and we had agreed to do that, and now we're left with nothing. So that's when that whole thing went through, that we had made the commitment to keep that with these stipulations that this was all going to take place. And that's where it all fell apart just 2 months ago. So now we're left again with the building with, we have to try and make some kind of decision exactly what it is we're going to do with. Because we don't have the funds in order to change that.
Well, just to comment on that, and kind of piggyback on what Mr. Iaquinto had to say about this, we didn't have just one plan, we had backup plans. And we talked about doing something with Northfield Human Services, and all along we recognized the difficulties of dealing with two entirely different entities. And we always had in our backup plan, and it's something we discussed at a board level. We were all there and we all discussed it. That
Never voted on anything.
that if we needed to, or if we wanted to, that was something that the township could pursue as far as making that into a community center, or if nothing else, that we may look at some short-term lease with another entity so that we have more time to decide what we'd like to do, or we would have more time to explore granting opportunities. Because the only way that many of these communities that we have heard and seen about, they all didn't start out successful. They all started out poor. They all started out without a lot of resources and without a lot of business contributing to a huge tax base. But they got that way because of their planning, because of their investment into their own community, and it grew. And if we do nothing, ours won't. We'll be as stagnant 10 years from now as we are today if we don't make some steps and we don't move in that direction to enhance. Mr. Iaquinto.